first, any idea that you have is an idea until you put it down on paper.
True.
Right? So in your head, you might have an idea of something cool, but until you put it down on paper in words and explain what it does and is, you don't have a solid thing, right? You haven't defined it.
Yes.
I had been seeing problems with patients in the clinic, so I'm a physician by training, and was seeing patients that were not adhering to their injectable products. We found that, obviously, injections suck for everybody.
Yes, it does.
Even if you're used to it, it's still not a fun process.
Fact.
November, December of 2023, though, we started getting calls from clinicians in medical spas and weight loss clinics.
Okay.
They were prescribing GLP-1, which is also known as Ozempic, Wegovy, those types of products, so that drug class. And another problem set that we had identified in our patient survey came up. These patients were overdosing on these products accidentally, right?
So help me understand, how does this device work in terms of, when you could talk about dosage, like you said, is it a one-time use, or how do you use this device?
Our device is patient controlled. So the patients will control the rate of needle insertion. They will never see the needle going in, but they will control that process.
I just like to touch things and show things.
Yep.
This is cool. Oh, it's hot too. It's still warm. It's fresh from the bakery.
I keep my cool under pressure like a boss. I'm all in, it don't matter what it costs. All I do is win and look good
I
from
know you're
the
probably wondering, why are we in the middle of Kansas? Well, I'll let you know. We are at the manufacturing plant for Love Lifesciences Unipen. And I know they always say we're no longer in Kansas, but we're in Kansas though, so what's up? I'm already geeked out because they got a lot of 3D printing going on the inside, so I'm excited to go see it, and I know you're gonna love it too, so come with me, let's go get a tour.
my pressure run up and they booking me. Been busy, been putting that work in. I'm dripping, it's working. Around the clock, I get to it. Don't take no breaks, I just do it.
Hey man, doing pretty good.
Good to see you, good to see you. Man, you're looking dapper, you're looking all good today. How you doing?
Thank you, doing pretty good. You're looking great yourself.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So where are we at right now?
Yeah, welcome to Gymtech. They're our contract manufacturers for Unipen, our single-use injection device.
Okay, this is out here. I like the space. I like the space. It's a bit of a good drive. It's gonna show us where we're at. So.
Oh yeah.
I definitely want to meet. I know we have a co-founder here today. I definitely want to meet this.
Yeah. We're meeting over here actually. So you guys can come on in.
Let's go. Awesome, beautiful. How you doing? Zeke?
Bradley.
Nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, Jason Andrews.
Nice to meet you. Oh man, I'm in you guys' space. This is awesome. It almost looks like my studio, you know? So let's sit down and talk some business, man. Thank you for having me in your awesome space. So Bradley, tell me a little bit about, because I know on the show Nick definitely talked about you, kind of the journey you guys have had. What does your position consist of? What do you do on a daily for the company, and kind of give us a little bit of bio about yourself?
Yeah, so Love Lifesciences, I'm a co-founder and CTO. I pretty much head up all the product development. So all these fun parts we see here have been painstakingly designed and tested and 3D printed and everything in between by myself and a small team. We met Gymtech. They're a fantastic manufacturer here in Spring Hill, Kansas. We're really excited to work with them because, Nick and I being based in Kansas, we want to keep all the roots here in the state and make sure that we can keep all that success here as well.
Awesome. So I think also too, I want to say this. People don't know this. So I was a civil engineer for about a year, and I would say the best AutoCAD guy. So I've worked with design. I've designed some stuff.
You know exactly how it goes?
Yes, it was actually fun. So I never actually, but people come to me, Zeke, what help me with this assignment? But that's neither here nor there. But then tell me a little bit of why, I know you talked about Kansas and this being important for you, especially having in this location. What does that partnership look like for you both?
Yeah, so for us, having Gymtech kind of in our backyard is fantastic. We're kind of up here all the time making sure that part files are looking right and molds are looking right as well. We can come in as we do testing and take parts right off the assembly line and confirm all those, make sure the quality assurances are all in place as well. So it's been a huge help having them right here in our backyard. Yeah,
so on the Gymtech side, I want to ask you this. I know that it takes a lot of process to get to the final product. What have been some advancements you've made that you found out you've been able to kind of like make it work better?
Sure. So I would tell you, working with Bradley specifically, but Bradley and Nick collectively on products like this, when you're going from an idea phase and we work through what the design can look like, and so when you're looking at making things like this in scale, like where the parting lines are, where certain pieces are, can make a really big difference on how it's manufactured, how easily it's manufactured. And so working with a partner where you can go through that and help in the design phase really helps to make a better, final, reproducible, scalable product.
Yeah, so tell me, because I know he talked about technology, so how many arguments have you had either with Nick on the design model? Tell me about that.
I think the fun thing about working with Nick is that, we have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And so we've kind of, even without even talking about it at the beginning, we were able to figure out a workflow that allowed us to both present our ideas in an open space. And
what
so,
he's not telling you is I can't draw. And ideas when you can't draw.
He's put in a very nice manner.
I've learned if you hold the drawing far enough and squint, you can kind of see what he's trying to put down.
And the reason why I asked it because I know, I run an app company and a video company. I'm always arguing my team on something. Maybe it's something very technical that I don't even know anything about. I'm just trying to get my mind across. Right. So I know there has to be some kind of dynamic to be able to go over that. So if you guys are looking for any part-time CAD designers, I'm on. Let me know.
I think we're gonna have to look into that.
Let me know.
We're always looking for.
Let me know. I was the guy. Yeah. I got an A in AutoCAD, so I was the guy. But Brad, thank you so much. And I think I'm gonna let's take a tour of Gem so you can give us some tech. I wanna get some tech in. So, anyways, good to meet you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna continue this. And Nick, you guys can continue doing business stuff while I go do some tour.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
I'm at the top, that's 1, not 2 or 3. This real life, baby, don't make believe. I just make it look easy like ABC. I'm on it 24/7, 25/8. I just pick up the pace.
What's up, good people? Welcome back to Student Entrepreneur Season 2. I'm your host, Zeke Wanganga, your favorite student entrepreneur. Man, I really just be giving myself these accolades, but whatever. It's my show, so I can do whatever I want. Anyways, on the show, we bring inspired entrepreneurs and founders who are creating innovative ideas that positively impact the world. Our goal is to share their stories to highlight the steps they took to becoming successful, with hopes to inspire you to start your own entrepreneurial journey. Let me be clear, there is no BS on this show. We keep it real, so listen closely. Before we get started, I want to say shout out to Paulson for sponsoring this episode. Paulson is one of the top law firms in the US. Just recently, they were nationally recognized on the 2024 Best Law Firms list by Best Lawyers in 37 practices and regionally in 63 practices. So if you own a tech, finance, healthcare, real estate, life sciences, or private equity company, pull up to Paulson and they'll get you all your legal solutions that you need. Now we've paid some bills, let's get to my guest for this episode. If you've ever been to a doctor, you know shots hurt. It do be hurting though. Our next guest has raised $1.2 million with a medical device that helps reduce the pain of injectables. Now, help me make welcome the founder of Love Lifesciences, the one and only Nick Love. How you doing, Nick?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're looking dapper today.
Trying to be.
Shoot!
Yeah, so are you.
I like the shirt, like the jacket, the fit. How's your day going?
It's been phenomenal so far. It's been a busy week, but we're getting a lot done.
You getting some good success during the week? It's last day of the week, I think.
Yeah, no, we're getting success every day of the week. That's kind of the hard part of it, right?
That's what we love. So it gives us a little bit of a high get into this episode. So I'm excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, man.
Sweet. So before I start with the questions, do you want to hear a quick story about my childhood trauma and challenges with injectables?
Absolutely.
Sweet. So, well, you guys, it's going to be a very, it might be funny, but we'll see where it goes. So I remember when I was a kid, I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. Whenever we would go to do vaccines at the hospital, they would have to have at least 4 nurses to hold me down, right? And I was always wondering, and they had to get like what I mean nurses, like not normal. They had to hire nurses that were like big to hold me down because I hated injectables, and I was wondering are these even nurses, or did they have to go hire people just for me?
They had security.
They had security for me. So whenever I pull up this house, so that didn't work. So they did it so many times. I think it was affecting their budget. So after that, they were like, you know what? We just give him pills because we cannot afford to have him be injected. Anyways, that's my trauma with injectables. I don't do syringes till today. I do not do it. Yeah. So anyways, tell us a bit about your company and the product you guys have founded. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Love Lifesciences, we were founded back in 2021.
Okay.
I had been seeing problems with patients in the clinic, so I'm a physician by training, and was seeing patients that were not adhering to their injectable products exactly for the problem that you had described, right?
Yes.
Pain associated with the process,
yes.
even if they had auto-injector devices, which are supposed to help with that pain process.
Mm-hmm.
I had come up with a concept initially for a device that we have now called Multipen, which time gates access to injectables so that patients cannot accidentally overdose or underdose on those types of products when they have to administer them at home.
Okay.
I met my co-founder, Bradley Hopper, shortly thereafter, and we were off to the races. Bradley said, Nick, Multipen's a very complex device. It is something that the market hasn't seen yet.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and scale this back to a single-use device. And for me, I go, Well, there's plenty of other injection devices out there. There's Humira, which has an injection device. There are insulin pens, EpiPen, all sorts of different auto-injector devices. Why would one device be any different than others? And so we decided, you know, why not ask the patients, right? The patients know what the problems are. They're the ones that are experiencing this.
Yes.
And so we produced a 400 patient survey with patients administering 3.6 injections per week on average across 37 different injectable products. So a large amount of data. And we found that obviously injections suck for everybody.
Yes, it does.
Even if you're used to it, it's still not a fun process.
Fact.
And so what we had further identified in this process is that auto-injectors are tremendously better than having to pull medication out of a vial, put a needle on there, watch the needle go in and doing all of that process, right? But we found that patients want to control the injection process, which was very interesting, right? And the reason why is there's two main pain points with the injection process. How quickly needles are inserted into the skin, right? So that can cause bruising at the injection site,
true.
Which is both painful initially, but if you're giving yourself an injection multiple times a week or multiple weeks in a year, it gets pretty preventative to keep taking those things.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And then the other piece of the puzzle for auto-injectors that patients didn't like was that medication was either being ejected from the device so quickly that it was forming a bubble under the skin that was also very painful, or it was ejecting so slowly that patients were moving the device away from the injection site with the device still spewing out medication, so they weren't getting the full dose. So we said, okay, we know that patients, you know, they have these problems with auto-injectors, and it's around the automated features of them that's really causing the patient's problems. But patients don't want to see the needle, they don't want to interact with it, they don't want to dose things out either. And so we decided we were going to create Unipen, our single-use injection device that is a hybrid injection device. So it strips away the pain points of those auto-injectors, but integrates the control that patients desire and syringes allow patients to have.
Wow.
And so that's how we came to Unipen, a single-use device.
And I definitely want to be able to get back into the research, but I want to ask this question. Unipen, why did you call it Unipen, and why is that important?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a twofold thing there. So multi-pin being the first device, right? Multiple injections.
Exactly.
And we decided to scale back to a single injection. So Unipen being one pin.
Sweet.
We later realized and kind of developed the device in a specific manner that allows the device to be therapeutic agnostic. And so we can integrate a large majority of injectable products into our device without any redevelopment. And the interesting piece about that is if you look at the prefix uni, universal. And so our device Unipen is the universal pin for injectable products.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So, you know, why, as you're talking about it, I'm like, why didn't this exist 10 years ago when I was going through the turmoil of injectables, right? I'll tell another quick story. I remember, I think I was probably, the last time I had the worst injection experience was, so we used to have a dog, and I used to play a lot with the dog, and he would like always bite me. So I had to go and get tetanus shots.
Tetanus for nails, rabies, all those.
Yes. And I don't know what kind of tetanus shot they had, because I'm from Nigeria. I don't know what kind of tetanus shot they had, but if they injected in you, one of my leg always went numb, kind of numb. So I always dreaded those. So if only we had the Unipen just to give me that shot, I wouldn't even worry about getting bit by a dog. Another story for another day. But tell me about, you know, you being able to, because one thing we talk about on this show is before you start a company, before you start a product, do research on the customer, the users, and find out what they want to do or what they need help with. Did this come automatically to you to ask the users, or was it something you've learned doing your research in the biosciences space? Yeah,
so we kind of, it's interesting because we did not set out developing a device to go and solve a problem initially. I had seen the problem with patients in the clinic, right? It wasn't one patient, it wasn't two patients, it was dozens of patients that I was seeing, and they're going, I just don't take that medication. Why not? I don't feel like it. I don't enjoy the process. And the problem with that is if patients aren't taking their medications appropriately, adhering to them, right? They either get the effects of the disease that they're trying to stop, or the medication doesn't work appropriately, right? If you're not keeping that consistent regimen, you're not having enough medication in your system to continually have that therapeutic effect. And so I was seeing patients coming into the hospital with more problems than they had initially because they weren't taking these medications. And so that was my first insight into this problem. But yeah, I think anybody will tell you in developing any type of medical device or any innovation at all is you have to ask the people that are going to be using the product what their problem is, right? And so from a physician's perspective, I could assume what the problem was, right? I could go online and look at all of the different reasons why patients don't adhere to medications, which that's an incredibly complex problem set in itself.
True.
But we needed to ask the patients directly, right? And
Yes.
so that's what we did with our patient survey.
So I think for me, hearing that validates everything we're talking about in this show. Now tell me this, how do you go from, doing research to starting a company? How did you take off the hat, or did you ever take off the hat of being a researcher to start a company? How was that process like for you?
Yeah, you never take off the hat.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think the thing that almost every entrepreneur will tell you is that you're wearing a million hats any given day of the week, right?
That's true.
And so just today alone, working on FDA documentation, talking to clients, talking to potential investors, you're having all those conversations simultaneously, right? And so that research hat never comes off.
So for you, when you are conducting this research, who became your target audience? How did you start? Did you start like the massive scale of target, or did you niche it down to who was the target audience that you found doing your research?
Yeah, so at first it was just talking to individuals that we knew, right? So I'd seen this problem with patients, but obviously it's got to be a larger problem than just with my patients. So I went out and asked my friends and family that were having these problems as well. Bradley went out and did the same thing. He has family members taking these injectables just like I have. And so we would ask them, what are the problems you deal with, right? Even if you're adhering to your medications, you have to be experiencing problems here.
Yeah.
Just talk to us about it. Ask open-ended questions, because if you ask yes/no questions, right, you start to force people into answering things, right?
That's true.
And so it was, how do you ask a question that's very open to allow them to expand on all of the problems they're experiencing? And just from talking to a select few individuals, we found that the problems are very similar across the board here. So now let's see from those individuals how broad this problem set is, right? And so that's where the 400 patient survey initially came in was, all right, these are individuals taking injectables. Let's see if this is the same problem for everybody. And it turns out, yeah, it's a tremendous number of problems that these patients are dealing with.
So that's how you validate that this is an actual problem.
Yeah. And so it's interesting the problem that we're solving, because our device at the end of the day is sold to pharma, right? So it's either sold to a pharmaceutical company or to a compounding pharmacy in our case right now.
Okay.
So our client is not the end user, which is a very interesting nuance to this, right? And so we identified a problem that patients were dealing with, but was that really a problem that our clients were dealing with is a different question, right?
So talk about that. I really want you to, because I was going to get to how do you make money, who pays you money? Yeah. How do you sell your research to the people who you actually need to pay you money for this? Because like you said, users only want to pay you money. It's the companies who are going to buy this from you to be able to.
Yeah. So with developing our device, right, there were a couple incredible benefits relative to auto-injectors when you consider, we'll kind of separate the industries out, the pharmaceutical space, right? So with an auto-injector device, it takes years to develop those devices and costs millions of dollars, tremendous amounts of manpower and time and commitment to do those things. The interesting piece about that is if you're Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, a large pharma company, you have those resources, you can deploy those, and you can plan for that. If you are a small or mid-sized pharma company, right, you might not have those resources. And you often aren't thinking about an injection device until incredibly late in the clinical trials process, right?
Fact, yeah.
Where it becomes too late to start thinking about integrating an auto-injector that'll take 5 years to develop because your drug's about ready to go. And so because Unipen is therapeutic agnostic, right, we don't have to make any changes to the device to integrate new subcutaneously injected therapeutics. Our device removes that upfront timeline drastically so that we can integrate in phase 2, phase 3 of clinical trials with those small and mid-sized pharma companies because there's no redevelopment of the device. So we have to put the device in with the drug, demonstrate that it works effectively, but there's no development timelines, there's no upfront investment into the device like the regular auto-injector devices are. And so that's the problem set that we initially went out to solve for our direct clients, right? Because as somebody coming from the medical side of things, very, very patient-centric, that is in the root of Love Lifesciences DNA. But at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily make companies money, right?
That's true.
And for a product to ever impact patients, it has to make money for people upstream for you to get the investment to make all of that happen.
True.
And so we went out to solve this problem of small, mid-sized pharma companies, right? That was our sweet spot. About gosh, November, December of 2023, though, we started getting calls from clinicians in medical spas and weight loss clinics.
Okay.
They were prescribing GLP-1, which is also known as Ozempic, Wegovy, those types of products, so that drug class. They were prescribing that from compounding pharmacies to their patients. And another problem set that we had identified in our patient survey came up. These patients were overdosing on these products accidentally, right? They were calling their physicians saying, hey, there's not enough medication in my vial.
Yes.
Which tells you that they're taking too much of that medication, right? And in December of 2023, CNN published an article where there was a 1,500% increase in poison center calls solely related to overdoses like this with the GLP-1s.
Wow.
And so as we talk to these clinicians, they're saying, this is a problem, this is a huge problem. We're not only validating that this is a problem for patients, it's a problem for their clinicians trying to provide better care for them. And this is when we started kind of falling into the path of compounding pharmacies a bit.
Okay.
We realized there's no injection devices in the space at all for plenty of different reasons, right? But some of the predominant ones are compounding pharmacies don't have millions of dollars in their back pocket to invest in injection devices, right? So it was a very similar problem that we were solving for pharma, but in the compounding pharmacy space. And so we have kind of transitioned into that market to initially enter the markets, if you will.
Sweet. So let's talk about, I'm glad you kind of analyze the different problems it solves, because on one side it's solving, being able to make it painless, but at the same time is making sure you have the right dosage, right?
Yeah.
So help me understand, how does this device work in terms of, when you could talk about dosage, like you said, is it a one-time use, or how do you use this device?
Yeah, so Unipen is a single-use injection device that is completely patient-controlled. So with auto-injectors, you have the needle shield, which is you start pressing it and there's a point of no return where that needle is driven in, right? That's automated, and then medication is automatically ejected from auto-injector devices. Our device is patient-controlled, so the patients will control the rate of needle insertion. They will never see the needle going in, but they will control that process. And then patients will eject medication on their own, like they're clicking a ballpoint pen, right? And so that's how they'll eject the medication. Our device is structured so that you can fill the device with whatever volume of medication that you need. So say you're on a dose of medication that requires 0.5 milliliters, and I'm on one that requires 1 milliliter. We can both use the same type of device. The compounding pharmacy or pharmaceutical company can fill the exact same device with different amounts of medication so that different patients can have their prescriptions tailored to them specifically.
So what about a cost associated with it? How does this compare to other things in the market when it comes to cost?
Yeah, so we're tremendously cheaper. So that's one of the major impacts, right? Is if you don't have those huge timelines where you have to have tons of members on your team developing a device, millions in upfront investment, we're already providing the pharmaceutical and the compounding pharmacy companies the opportunity to decrease their pricing downstream for patients. When you look at the cost of an auto-injector as a whole, right? So I think, without calling out some name brands here, the drug epinephrine is a great example. So I'm sure everybody knows the devices used for anaphylactic shock for epinephrine, right? Epinephrine, the drug, costs about $1 per dose. And then the device itself costs, nothing crazy. It's like $20, $25, right? The brand name products selling auto-injector devices with epinephrine in it are selling for about $200. And so you can see the amount of effort and process that goes into building one of these types of products. And so we're able to come in and help drastically reduce those fees.
Shout out to KC SourceLink for sponsoring this episode. If you're a business owner looking to find resources to grow your business, definitely go to kcsourcelink.org and get the info.
All right, so we're entering our production facility here. And so first thing I'll show you is our this is our tool room. Well, this is the machine's working. So making things is cool, but it's not always as easy as we'd like it to be. But anyway, so this is our tool room here. So mostly what we do, and you'll see with some of this, is that not only do we do plastic injection molded parts, but a lot of them have some secondary operations, which we do here, and they also have some assembly, which we'll show you later. But the process is basically it melts plastic resins into a steel mold that's formed, and then the parts come out of the machine, and then we assemble them from there. So every time it comes out, we're cleaning, we're doing our preventative maintenance, all the things to the mold get done right here, and Bolmero's the main guy who handles that for us.
How you doing? How you doing? Okay, sweet.
Yeah, so that's
So that's the plastic over there, you said?
so this is all of our raw materials.
Okay.
So these are all the resins, so petroleum-based resins, which melt into the plastic. Any colorants, all that stuff is stored over here. Our water treatment is back over there in the corner. So, these are all our molds that are stored. So the customer owns the molds. So Love Lifesciences owns the molds. We keep them here. And maintain those molds, run the parts. You know, as things change or new products come out, they'll run new molds. And
I'll tell you a quick joke before we pass here, because I always like to tell jokes. So when I think I was like 10 or 11, an uncle of mine saw me. I was opening like on a broken TV. I was, you know, breaking it apart, and he was like, "You're gonna be an engineer." No, what I was doing is selling the parts. So when I see these parts, it reminds me of that. But that's good. I just wanted to let you know about that.
I like that. That's good. You're mechanical. You knew that.
Yes.
You knew that. And so we'll kind of walk down. So we've got 15 different machines.
Right.
They range in size. Right. So smaller, 55 ton up to 500 ton. That's basically just the size of the mold and the size of the part. So we've got two things here, kind of our production facility. So we showed you the tool room. This is our production facility. And then we'll show you kind of an assembly room where we kind of take some of these parts and put them together.
I just like to touch things and show things.
Yep.
This is cool. Oh, it's hot too. It's still warm. It's fresh from the bakery.
It cools, but it doesn't.
I don't have a limit.
Yes. Wow.
I don't have a limit.
Fresh plastic. All right, let's keep going. My bad. I get distracted.
And so a lot of these parts would then come out. We call this a sub-assembly. So a lot of these plastic parts that we run, springs, O-rings, all get put together on a sub-assembly, and we'll show you in our final assembly room. So this is very similar to what Love Lifesciences has. So within their device, which you've seen, there's 6 plastic parts, there's a spring, and all that runs individually and then gets put together for a final part before it's sent off to the pharmacy to be loaded.
So for Life Sciences, right, for their device, how many do you print, or if there was capacity to expand, how many are you able to print in here per day or per week if they have the product?
So with the current molds that they have, 150,000 a month.
Okay,
Give or take.
Gotcha. Okay. So what would be if you don't want to go to $1 million a month? What would help to expand that?
So there's two things. One is, so right now so each of these molds there's a cavity, right? And so the cavity is the size of the part.
Okay.
And so right now they're 2 cavity molds. So if they were to do 8 cavity molds, we could do $500,000, 600,000 a month.
I see. Okay. How much do those cost?
So the molds themselves are on the low end 40 or 50,000, on the high end 150,000 per mold.
Wow.
And so they've got 4 different molds today, and higher cavity molds are more expensive. So the cost of tooling is a pretty expensive proposition.
Wow. 50K, 150K. Wow.
Yeah.
And you make 500,000 units a month, right?
Yes.
From those. This is fantastic. I have never been in a warehouse where they print plastic before, and I got to touch some of the stuff you actually print here, so it was really very fascinating. So let me ask you this. I like numbers, so if I were to say I wanted a machine like that to print some of my creative ideas, how much would a green machine cost me?
The big green machines, I'll say 250,000.
Not my budget. Okay, let's keep going.
So this is our final assembly room, and so we showed you earlier kind of what the sub-assembled part looks like.
Yes.
And then it goes through an air test and some other components before the final assembly takes place in this room. And so for Love Lifesciences specifically, this is where their 6 components will all get compiled together, boxed up, and then ready to ship over there. So,
well, what does it take for me to get a job in this place? That's some other question. I don't have the budget to buy the equipment.
We need somebody from 12 to 8. If you're willing to come to, if you're a night owl, we could use you.
Just let me know. Just let me know. I'm gonna pull up. But thank you so much. Thank you for giving us a tour of the space. This is fascinating. I think it's cool to kind of say that we have technology like this in Kansas. Because I always say you're not in Kansas no more, but we in Kansas right now.
Kansas.
We got tech going on.
We love it.
So what you doing? Show up. So thank you so much. for the tour, and
Thank you.
I'm gonna keep you updated. Thank you. Let's switch subjects a little bit. That's a little bit more technical, right? So what are the steps you took? Because the reason why I'm asking this is I know that there's a lot of, people who are like working in life sciences or doing research and are trying to be able to take the idea from just doing research to actual product or an actual business.
Yeah.
What are some steps or resources you use to go from doing lab researches to starting a business to having a co-founder and all that? What was the steps you took?
Yeah. There's a lot. It's going to be different for everybody,
Yes,
right?
it is.
And I'll speak from the perspective of life sciences and medical innovation. But first, any idea that you have is an idea until you put it down on paper.
True.
Right. I think that's the first biggest hurdle a lot of people don't do is you see the problem. You go, oh, that's a big problem I'd love to solve. And then you get a cool idea about how to solve that, but you don't write it down. And when you don't write something down, you don't critically think about what it even is, right? So in your head, you might have an idea of something cool, but until you put it down on paper in words and explain what it does and is, you don't have a solid thing, right? You haven't defined it.
Yes.
And so I encourage everybody that's even thinking about solving problems to write that down and just define what it is first.
Yes.
And that's what I had done with Multipen. And I just kind of forgot about it, frankly. Like I kind of wasn't thinking about it, went to bed one night, a month later and woke up and realized, holy smokes, there's a great application for this product that I'd never even thought about before.
Yes, yes.
And so started going down that path. But once you have the idea written down, you definitely need to define who the payers are going to be for the product, right?
Right.
Whether that is your direct client, whether they're patients downstream that we aren't necessarily selling directly to. You need to define the chain of participants there.
True.
And then you need to figure out how you're going to make money doing it, right? That's kind of the biggest hurdle for most people innovating in the life sciences space, right? Is we come from a background of caring for patients, and that's what we want to do. But if your innovation is not making money for everybody else in the chain, it's never going to get to patients because of how much has to go into it, right? So you have to think about the finances very early on. You don't have to have a great definition of it, but just understand what it looks like.
Yes.
And then you start learning like everything you possibly can about the industry, your competitors. Don't be afraid to think about competitors. Don't be afraid to think about all the scary things.
Yes.
Because those scary things are going to come up eventually, and you should have a strategy to work with them or work through them. And opportunities arise where those aren't even problems at the end of the day if you know they're ahead, right?
Yes.
So think about those scary things out the gate. From there, intellectual property, patenting, trademarking, all those things are incredibly important. Unless you're an attorney, don't do it yourself. Right?
Okay.
Those are kind of some of the early steps there, yeah.
Yeah, so let's, speaking of, unless you're an attorney, do it yourself. How has Pulcinelli helped your journey in terms of the legal side of things?
Yeah, it's been tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, we were introduced to Pulcinelli through a family friend.
Okay.
And they kind of just walked us through, these are attorneys, this is how attorneys work, this is how the law firm works, all of that stuff. So very early education because we had never interacted with an attorney group like that. And then from there, when you talk about things like how do we form an LLC, right? Or how do you form a C Corp? How do you just start the company, right? They can give you quick guidance and there's nothing crazy that they'll charge you for. These are the things you should do, right?
Yes.
From there, there's intellectual property, so patent drafting, right?
Exactly.
So Corey and Josh are the two attorneys that we work very closely at Pulcinelli on our intellectual property, and gosh, do they know their stuff, man. It's phenomenal to come to them and say, this is our device, this is what we think we should patent, these are the claims we think we need. And then for them to sit there on the call and go, well, you're not even thinking about this, because if I was your competitor, I would do this. And then we're going, okay, well, let's make sure that's a claim that's protected in our patents, right?
Exactly.
And so it's phenomenal working with them from an IP standpoint, from the security standpoint. When you're fundraising, you can insert nuances into contracts to make both investors and the company happy. You don't have to go with a template. And so working with Pulcinelli specifically, they're a very innovative group of people that will solve a lot of your problems.
So they got it done.
Oh, yeah.
You already heard it. So let's shift gears a little bit more. You've raised over $1 million. How did you do that, and what are the best strategies you think has worked for you so far in raising capital?
So the first steps in getting any money into the business was grant opportunities, right? So we leveraged Digital Sandbox, which is a local Kansas City group that supports both Kansas and Missouri, They were phenomenal to work with, right? They kind of taught us how to pitch for the first time, right? This is what a pitch deck should look like. This is how you structure it. And then you pitch it to people and you get feedback. And so it's your first step into what is it like to pitch a company. The Kansas Department of Commerce also offered us some very nice loans and grants as well to help us just get our feet underneath ourselves.
Okay.
From there, we raised a pre-seed and or friends and family round, right? And so we were kind of at the point where obviously our community that we went out and talked to was committed to solving these problems too, because they were experiencing it, right?
Yes.
And so we had people coming to us going, how do I invest in your company? Can I invest in your company? And so we raised money through WeFunder, where these individuals were able to invest money and receive equity in the company or ownership stake in the company.
Yes, yes.
That got us just over $100,000.
Wow.
And it allowed us to get a little more runway to go raise a larger sum of money, about $1 million, right? And that's a process, man. It's a slog. You hear no a million times before you hear one, yeah, come on in and I'll talk with you, right? And then you hear a million more no's before you hear a yes. And so it's a long process. It's a process that's very humbling because you're going into meetings with people whose entire intention is to invest, but in order to do that comfortably, they have to find the problems in the company, right? They don't necessarily have to solve those problems, but they have to know where they are and if they're comfortable with those problems. And so every investor meeting you take is hearing about your problems. That's a very difficult conversation to have over and over and over. And so my first piece...
When you say hearing about your problems is what you're not doing right, or what do you mean by your problems?
Yeah, so the company's problems, right? So have you thought, a great question we always get is, do you have patents, right? Yes, we do, right? But sometimes companies don't have patents and they're going, we don't have those yet. And the investors go, I can't invest in this because that's too risky for me if you don't even have ownership of this idea, right? If you don't have answers to who's going to buy this product or who are the payers or any of those things, right?
Yes.
The investor wants to know the entire picture, good, bad, and ugly, right? Yes. And you have to know what's good, bad, and ugly. So look at the scary things so you have at least an understanding of what it all looks like.
What have you learned or improved from the Digital Sandbox pitch till your improvement till today? What is one key thing you got or things you've been able to add on to as you're moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're a completely different company, right? And so are you talking about the pitch directly?
Yeah, pitching and then that first pitch and then going from that to be able to raise different funds and where you are today.
Yeah, so I used to think with Digital Sandbox, it was, here's an introduction, you go in and here's the slide deck and you pitch the slide deck, right? And you walk through the slide and this is what this piece of information is and this is what this is. In reality, fundraising is not like that at all. Fundraising is you get a warm introduction to somebody, you talk with them for a little bit, right? Maybe you're looking for advice and guidance from people, right? Who find interest in the company.
Yes.
But the investor conversations you start to have are conversations. It's not running somebody through a pitch deck. If you get pigeonholed into pitching your pitch deck the first time you meet somebody, it generally doesn't go that well because they don't know you, so they don't trust a lot of the words that you're saying necessarily. But they also just don't get to know the natural conversation flow about your company that you have, right? A slide deck shows all of the great pieces of your company, but there's a lot more that comes out in conversation.
True.
And so it's about having those conversations is where you kind of, the rubber meets the road.
Wow, that is so key because if you always thinking pitching, because I'm just gonna say I hate people who just come up to me and pitch me an idea of a company without even knowing who I am, asking questions about myself, right? It's like if you want me to be interested in your idea, at least get to know me and let's talk about something else before we get to that. Because if you're pitching me, is that all this is about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, even though we're gonna both benefit from it, but like, you know, being able to have conversations about your company, who you are as a person, and then we can lead to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very great point in terms of changing the perspective from just pitching, because, you know, pitching to investors on a slide, that's okay. But do you know your stuff enough to talk about it without having a slide deck behind you?
Exactly.
Right? If they ask you a question on the fly, can you bring up answers that directly go to your company without even being able to search something on Google or search a pitch deck?
Yeah, and you don't even need to have all the answers, right?
Exactly.
If you don't have an answer, saying, hey, I don't have an answer for that, but let me get back to you, or I see what you're asking. We've never thought about that before. But that's what makes a conversation interesting, is that the person you're talking to, the potential investor that asks the question out of left field you've never thought about, might have a perspective for you that you can take value out of that, even without taking money from them. They brought value to you in your company, right? And so it's just interesting having a conversation as opposed to just trying to sell what you have. Right?
Yes. I definitely want to come back to that, but let's change gears a little bit. So let me ask you this. I know that, as an entrepreneur, becoming a founder, there is so many other things that have, like you say, you wear different hats. You can wear any hat that you can see in terms of running a company. And at the same time, you're having, personal life things you have to deal with. How do you manage all this chaos? And how do you find your way to be focused in what you're doing?
Yeah. First is people, right? I have the best co-founder you could possibly imagine, Bradley, right? He's somebody that came in and took half of it off my plate, right? Before it was even a company, it's stressful, right? Like any step of this is. And Bradley has continued to stepwise with me tackle these big problems, right?
Yes.
I feel awful for the people that are solo entrepreneurs, right? That's a hard thing to do when you don't have somebody to lean into.
It is.
The second is my wife, right, and my family.
Yes.
I mean, it's for some people, I'm sure the family aspects might be difficult and hard, but God, it's amazing when you have the support system that I do. And so shout out to Kelsey, my parents, and my sister, and everybody else as well.
Yes.
So the support system that I have, whether that's my family or my co-founder, has been the way that I manage a lot of this, right? I also started Love Lifesciences when I was in medical school. So you don't sleep in medical school to begin with.
That's true.
But when you start a company and you're in medical school, it is you don't ever sleep.
Amplifies it. Yeah.
And so I kind of got used to either lack of sleep or taking 15 to 30 minutes out of my day to go work out when I could, right?
Wow.
Instead of an hour-long workout that I used to have. Now it's all right. Let's get it done. Let's move on to the next thing, right? So support system, just being used to not sleeping, I think is another big thing. But then task management is big, right?
Yes.
And Maria Flynn, she actually just launched her book, I think last week, Make Opportunity Happen. She talks about this problem very specifically and how do you manage your time when everything is of the utmost importance to you, right? The fallacy is if everything is important to you, nothing is important to you, right? If everything is your number one problem, you're not going to go solve all of those problems, right? And so if you think about what we're dealing with right now, we have to raise money so that we can go and manufacture, right? We have to figure out the manufacturing processes before our device can be produced at scale, right?
Yes.
We need to find those clients. We need to find the best clients for market release. We need to submit for the FDA. We have all of these problems that are top priority problems, but you still have to tier those. And so keeping track of everything, whether that's weekly meetings, whether that's daily scrum, a phone call, whatever it is, but making sure your team is all on the same page, making sure that you have your task management specifically. I have a notebook, right, where I keep all of my tasks aligned.
Yes.
And then it's good luck from there.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's so key. I'm glad you brought that up because full disclosure, I'm not the most organized human being in the world. Sometimes I hate organizations if it were, I want things organized, but not too much. If it's too much, I don't want it. But I always have a notebook on me, right? It's like you said, being able to put the different tasks on your note and be able to, this is the most important. For example, I would say, a client from my video business would say, hey, I need a quote from you for this. I'll put out a higher priority because that pays my bills. And then I have to send an email there. So I'll be able to prioritize which one goes first. And once I know it goes out, I know that my day is pretty much done. And then, how do you do that? How do you classify your day in terms of utmost importance, level, and level? Yeah,
it's begin with the end in mind, right? It's where we have to get to, right?
Yes.
Well, okay, if that's 100 steps away, what's step 99? What's step 98? And if you think through that process from where you need to be or where you want to be, you know what has to happen, right? And so then you can think critically about the process, right? So we might want to be working on manufacturing problems right now, but if we don't find investment dollars, we can't even go into manufacturing. So manufacturing may become a second priority if we don't have any cash in the bank at all, right?
Yes.
Whereas the flip side, right, I might want to work on FDA documentation to submit for the FDA, but if we don't have a robust test for the device for one specific component or another, then we can't move forward with submitting for the FDA clearance. So we can't submit the device at all. So you have to work on developing the test and finding the participants. And so if you just think about what the endpoint is, you can define the steps to get there, and that helps prioritize what you need to be doing.
So what does your day look like? Your laid back days or your most busy day? What does that look like?
It's so variable every single day, right? So I'm up gosh, I used to wake up at 4:30. I don't do that anymore. Yeah, it was. No, but now I have a baby, Blakely, and so I get to take care of her in the mornings, right?
Yes.
And so around 8 o'clock is when I'm like getting after it, right? Up until then, though, in the morning, I'm answering emails, phone calls, doing all that kind of stuff just to set up the day, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm working from the moment I wake up, right? From 8 o'clock on till whenever I'm done doing the tasks I have to do, it is sit at my desk, work on the documentation, connecting with people, producing studies, reviewing things. We might go and visit our manufacturers. We might go and I might produce a study myself. I might run a study myself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's incredibly variable every day.
Yeah.
And in addition to having all those things while sitting at the desk, there are meetings you have to go out and take,
That's
right?
true.
I'm a big fan of in-person meetings.
Yes.
I think Zoom is great to connect with people, but gosh, there's just nothing better than being in person.
That's true. That's true.
And so a lot of my day is, all right, get these 3 things done, go to that meeting, go to another meeting, go to another, come back, work some more. And then, on the days I get to pick up Blakely from daycare, right? She goes down for bed and then I'm working again after that.
Yes,
Sometimes I'm taking calls on the headset while I'm, hanging out with her. And then it's go to bed, right?
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit, right? Because you talked about raising funds for family and friends. I have found that most times the hardest people to convince about your idea is family and friends because they know you too much.
Yeah.
But also they can be the easiest people if they know you as someone who's, can do this thing. Yeah. But how do you, convince or let them know that this is actually something that's going to work? How do you convince them to be able to invest in you? Because one they say, hey, love, prayers to you, support, but when it comes to I need money, how do you do that in a very, professional way?
Yeah, I think your friends and family are going to be the best judge of who you are as a person, right?
Yes.
And most sophisticated investors will tell you they invest in the people first, right? That's the first thing is who's the management team, right? And so if you're talking to your friends and family about this problem, and they understand the problem because they're not investors, so you should not talk to your friends and family like they are. But if they've dealt with injections before, right? And you're asking about that problem, would you like that problem to be solved? Yes, I would. Well, we're developing a device to solve this problem. Oh, you are? Yeah, and you can invest in the company if you want to. You don't have to, right? I'd love to keep hearing about what you have to say, but it's you can share with them, right?
Yes.
It's an opportunity for them to be a part of it, right?
Yeah.
You're building a team, you're building an ecosystem, you're building a community around what you're doing, the problem you are solving and how you're solving it. And so your friends and family will tell you, yeah, we think you'd be a great leader to do this, but if they're not set and sold on the problem that you're going out to solve, they won't jump in anyways.
That's key. I'm gonna take that with me. No, that's really key because you have to be able to identify them with the problem, so they can be able to feel you from that aspect of things.
Yeah.
On that same line of storytelling, what have you found to be the most effective way to tell stories, either to investors or pitch into competition? Like, what has been your most successful thing you've done on that?
Yeah, it depends on the stage of your company, right? Very early stages, pitch competitions were phenomenal. It gets you out of your comfort zone. You do run through the whole pitch deck, right? Sometimes there's the elevator pitch competitions where you have a minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes to pitch. You get 10 slides, you get 10 minutes, you get 15 minutes. Maybe you don't have a pitch at all, but you stand up at a table, right? It helps you define your story to people and figure out how to tell it, right? So I highly encourage those pitch competitions first because you get feedback on how you presented that information.
Yes,
right?
correct.
But ultimately, I think pitch competitions only go so far because the return on investment on those starts to dwindle down as you're starting to raise more money, right? So a pitch competition that might give the winner, the first place, a $25,000 prize isn't even close to a drop in the bucket when you're raising millions of dollars, right? And so spending hours of your time to go to that pitch competition might not be helpful unless that competition has investors present and a network present and it's very specific to what you're doing, right? Communicating with investors, though, is tremendous. Communicating with people in the industry, even if they're not investors, is tremendous. Because the people in the industry know people who invest in that industry, right? Or they might see that this is such a big problem that they do want to become an investor for you, right? So just talk to the people, man. That's the best place.
Authentic and be able to just know your stuff. That's kind of what I say. Know your stuff and know how you be able to present yourself. I want to ask you this, so coming towards the end of the show, What are some things you're excited about that are coming up on the pipeline that you want to be able to share with the people?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, as I was sharing with you just before we hopped on, right? It's every day there's something phenomenal happening at Love Life Sciences where we don't necessarily get the time to take a step back and say, goodness, this is actually happening, right? But right now we're preparing our submission for the FDA for a single-use device.
Okay.
We are talking to multiple potential clients as well as their downstream clients as well. So we're speaking with clinic franchise groups that own hundreds of clinics across the U.S., telemedicine groups, some of the largest clients that we could have even tried to access. And it's all been on a very expedited timeline because there is a very drastic need for this device in the industry that we're going after.
Wow, that's what you want to hear. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the rubber's meeting the road, the traction's there. And so it's everything is coming up, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
FDA, clients, manufacturing scale up is going tremendously as well with Gymtech over here in Olathe.
Wow.
We have, it's new team members, new investors. It's everything exciting is happening every day.
Great. And that means you're going to be busier and busier. So
Yeah.
busy can be good. So let me ask you this. I know we've spoken in the past about, the tech hub, KCB and us as a tech hub. What role does Love Life Sciences play in that?
Yeah, so the Tech Hub they're developing, specifically those funds are going towards development of vaccines and biologics. If you've ever gone to the doctors and gotten a vaccine, it's an injectable, right?
Yes,
So it's a shot.
Yes.
Biologic medications are all injected, right? So every single one of them is. Whether that's through IV, whether that's subcutaneous, intramuscular, it has to be injected, right?
Yes.
And so...
Which I hate, by the way.
Oh,
but let's
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. I think everybody does, right?
I just had to say that.
No, absolutely.
Well, go ahead.
But we're the ability for the local companies that are developing those types of products to have an accessible, low cost, low threshold to integrate a competitive injection device with those products.
Okay.
And so we are a supportive technology for kind of the end goal of the Tech Hub's opportunity.
Oh, wow. Okay, sweet. What are some partners you're working with and providers on that end of things in those biologics industry?
Yeah, so in terms of supporting organizations just in the area,
Yes.
yeah, so we're working with BioKansas, right? KC BioNexus, GoTopeka is another big one. There's Digital Sandbox, which I've touched on.
Yes.
Kansas Department of Commerce has been phenomenal as well. There's a tremendous number of organizations here that have given us so much help and support, and I haven't even touched on half of them, right? But without all of the support that we've gotten, we would not be in the position that we are to be excelling and to be able to support the other organizations as well. So.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're coming towards the end of the show, but I want to dig deeper into you as a person, Nick. Like, why do you do this? Who do you do this for? What makes you get up in the morning? Like, who do you, looking back, maybe when you were younger, like, what is that fire in you that made you start this journey?
Yeah, so you asked a question that's going to have a longer answer than you might want.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was about 10 years old, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay.
She had a specific type called HER2 positive breast cancer, which did not have a cure for her at the time, right? So she went to multiple physicians and finally got to KU with Dr. Carol Fabian. Dr. Fabian enrolled her into a clinical trial for the drug Herceptin. Now Herceptin is world-renowned, saving millions of women's lives. It's phenomenal, right? But that was my introduction into medicine, right? That was you get used to the hospital that way, right?
Yeah.
And so I went down the path of going to medical school and all of that, but I was in a medicinal chemistry lab developing cancer therapeutics, right? And was presenting my research at the KU Cancer Center. And as I was presenting my research there, Dr. Carol Fabian showed up.
Wow.
And she's asking questions. She didn't know who I was, right?
Wow.
But it was one of those moments where it was like, my goodness, you don't know who I am, but gosh, you've had such a massive impact on my life, right? It was that moment that I realized that Dr. Fabian was not just a physician seeing my mom, treating my mom, right? She was working on clinical trials to get a drug to patients, but she was also at this cancer center place to present research, right? And so she was involved even at the earliest stages of research and development of these products that are having massive impacts on people. And so that kind of got the wheels turning a bit. And I realized that being a physician is phenomenal. We need people that are participating in the clinic and seeing those patients every day.
Yeah.
But without people like Dr. Fabian, who's doing the hard work from front to back of developing a product and helping to organize all of the effort that goes into that, we don't have amazing technologies that are actually going to help improve patients' lives and the care that they receive. So that kind of started piquing my interest a bit on the business side of things as well, because there's the problem of if your company doesn't make money, you're never going to get a product to patients, right? And so with my research background, my medicine background, and then I got an MBA as well, somewhere in the middle of all of that, just decided that medical innovation and entrepreneurship is where I wanted to be. I wanted to support the physicians with brilliant ideas that see the problems every day that patients are facing, right? And I wanted to be that conduit to get those ideas to the market and to patients, right? There's not many people that do that, that know that, and so that's where I wanted to plug myself into.
Yeah, wow.
And Love Lifesciences has given me that opportunity.
Wow, that is, I'm already fired up. I'm ready to go. Man, that's so cool to be able to kind of have this history of a doctor that impacted your life when you were young, that even know it, and how your device is going to be impacting different lives, right? Including mine, because I'm going to be using it because I need it. But as we're going towards the end of this, right, I keep saying this, but this conversation is so, I'm fascinated by what you're working on. But I want you to talk to a young person out there or someone in the early stage of a company that has heard about your story today and is inspired by you. What do you want to tell them?
Reach out. I'm here to answer questions, to provide advice, whatever you need. Their problem sets are going to be different from their neighbors, right? So
that's true.
I can't give you one piece of advice that's going to solve all the problems, right? But maybe I've been in your shoes before, right? So first, reach out to me if you can give my email or whatever it might be, right? The next big thing is ask questions. Don't be the smartest person in the room ever. And then make sure you have an open mind constantly and the flexibility to pivot and change where you need to. The most successful entrepreneurs will tell you, when I started the journey, I thought this was going to be it. And it turned out we were in this completely different industry with this completely different product that we never even thought about on day one. So flexibility is critical there. And then good people find good people. So go find good people to support you. Yeah, sweet. I mean, that's it. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming on the show. I've been inspired by your journey, your story, and the device, the tech you're developing. I think it's gonna change billions of lives. Like I said, I keep saying it. I don't like injectables, so I hope we can be able to get this in the system, be able to use them more often. So thank you again for coming on the show. And for those who are watching from home, thank you for tuning in for another Student Entrepreneur episode. Like I say, do whatever you want to do, subscribe, share it, that's on you. But we are going to continue sharing different stories to inspire people. I'm going to see you in this episode. Bye-bye for now.